Russian forces have intensified their activity in several directions around the Pokrovsk agglomeration. The Ukrainian Armed Forces are holding the line. Iran has announced a strike on Ukrainians. The Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has responded. Russian territory continues to burn. Ukrainian drones and missiles are hitting their targets precisely. The Kremlin's largest oil ports have been seriously damaged. Because of this, Putin is forced to ask Russian oligarchs for money. But are they willing to help? Meanwhile, Lukashenko went on a visit to North Korea and signed an agreement with the North Korean dictator. But does Putin know about this? These are today's news. My name is Eva Nikolashvili. Give us a like, subscribe because we're starting now. Russian occupiers have become more active in several directions of the Pokrovsk agglomeration at once. There is a recorded increase in the use of glide bombs and attack drones. This was reported by the 7th Rapid Response Corps of the Air Assault Forces of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. According to them, the Russians are using light vehicles, quad bikes, and infantry groups. The enemy is focusing its main efforts on advancing in the areas of Hryshyn and toward Radinske. They are trying to operate with so-called small pincers, advancing along the flanks. Ukrainian soldiers are repelling daily attacks on Hryshyn. Small arms battles continue in the center of the settlement, while Ukrainian units are holding back the enemy and blocking its advance from the eastern side of the village. Ukrainian soldiers are also blocking attempts by the occupiers to advance on the northern outskirts of Pokrovsk, and in the direction of Mirnohrad-Radinske, units in the defense zone of the 7th Air Assault Corps are destroying and stopping the enemy in close coordination with the 1st Azov Corps of the National Guard of Ukraine. Iran carried out a strike on a warehouse of Ukrainian anti-drone systems in Dubai, where 21 Ukrainians were present. This was reported by the Fars news agency, which is controlled by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. According to them, there is no information about the fate of the Ukrainians, but it is presumed that they may have died. Ukrainian media reacted instantly, and as expected, Iran's information turned out to be false. Ukrainian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Georgy Tiki stated that they officially refute this information and added that the Iranian regime often conducts such disinformation operations and in this regard is no different from the Russians. Ukraine is heading to Africa to defend its national interests there. The initiator of the strategy to advance on the African continent was the head of the office of the President of Ukraine, Kyrylo Budanov. What plans does the Ukrainian government have for Africa? And what other steps is Budanov, known for his foresight and effectiveness, currently implementing?
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Following the Middle East, Ukraine has set its sights on Africa.
For the first time, Ukraine is developing a strategy to expand its presence on the African continent. Kyrylo Budanov.
The work of Ukrainian special services in the African direction began long before official statements from Kyiv. Back in 2023, fighters from the main intelligence directorate began a successful hunt for Russian war criminals in Sudan.
Mr. Kirill Alexeyevich, on behalf of the 4th Center of the Main Intelligence Directorate of Ukraine, we congratulate you on your birthday. Everything will be Ukraine.
Ukrainian specialists helped the Tuaregs destroy Wagner convoys in Mali. Captured Russians in Africa were interrogated by fighters from the main intelligence directorate.
Rank?
Soldier.
Unit?
Wagner PMC.
How did you end up here in Sudan?
We traveled through Saru to Khartoum
What was the objective?
to overthrow the local government.
Even at that stage, Kyrylo Budanov, as the head of the main intelligence directorate, declared, Ukrainian specialists will search for and hunt down Russian war criminals anywhere in the world.
The Ukrainian side conducting an operation on the African continent is first and foremost a blow to the Russian Federation's ability to obtain additional funds for the Russian budget at a time when it is financing the active phase of hostilities in Ukraine. It is no coincidence that what is happening now on the African continent, a series of so-called military coups during which openly pro-Russian politicians have come to power, is taking place.
In Africa, the Kremlin first used Wagner mercenaries and then replaced them with the African Corps to change regimes and push European forces out of the region. In addition to providing military support to regimes friendly to Putin and controlling local resources, millions of Africans have come under the influence of the Russian Orthodox Church.
Putin is trading money for crosses in his pursuit of influence over Africa. The most significant expansion of the Russian Orthodox Church in history is serving as a new and powerful tool for the Kremlin.
In recent years, the Russian Orthodox Church has expanded its presence in Africa from 4 to 34 countries. In February 2026, the human rights organization Vocal Africa stated that Gundyaev, through his African Exarchate, is deceitfully recruiting residents of Kenya to fight in the war against Ukraine. Lacking money and sufficient military resources, Putin has bet on the influence of the church.
According to a report by Kenyan intelligence, a total of 1,000 Kenyans have been recruited to participate in combat operations on the side of Russia. The report details a network of unscrupulous officials who have allegedly colluded with human trafficking syndicates.
In addition to combating Russia's tentacles in Africa, Ukraine is deepening its economic and technological cooperation with the countries of the African continent. Wagner mercenaries and priests who deceitfully recruit people for war have turned many African countries against Russia, and Kiev has taken advantage of this.
We are considering the possibility of both military, technical, and economic cooperation with the leading economies of the African continent. Libya, Morocco, and accordingly Algeria are the main sources of natural resources that interest the Ukrainian side. First and foremost, this means oil and gas, as well as rare earth metals.
Ukrainian birds are destroying the Russian military-industrial complex deep behind enemy lines. This morning, Flamingo missiles struck an industrial hub in Chapayevsk, Samara region, more than 1,000 kilometers from the front line. For more details, let's turn to our correspondents on the ground.
You could see it like coming from over there, flying, and then toward the factory. The strike came from somewhere over there.
A black cloud.
The strike hit two military enterprises at once, Putin'S JSC and Polymer JSC. Putin'S produces industrial explosives such as TNT and nitrobenzene. Polymer manufactures weapons and ammunition as well as explosives for the Russian military. The company Firepoint published a video of the launch of Ukrainian birds. And while the missiles were flying toward Chapayevsk, drones were striking Russian oil refineries. In Yaroslavl, a package of sanctions hit the Slavneft Yanos oil refinery. This plant is the fourth largest in Russia in terms of oil processing volume.
Yes, terrible, terrible. Good morning. Good morning.
Meanwhile, in the Leningrad region, the Ust-Luga oil terminal continues to burn. According to satellite images, at least one oil loading berth at the oil terminal was destroyed and another was damaged. In addition, the consequences of the large-scale fire are visible in the area of the storage tanks and technical overpasses. The situation is not much better at the Primorsk oil port. Putin has become impoverished and is asking the oligarchs for money to continue waging war against Ukraine. Who has agreed to finance the Russian dictator, and theoretically, how long could this money last? Find out in our report. Putin has become impoverished and is asking the oligarchs for money for the war. During a meeting with businessmen, the Russian dictator stated that Russia would continue the war until it captured all of Donbas, according to Financial Times sources. In addition, Vladimir Putin asked the oligarchs to chip into the Russian state budget in order to stabilize the country's finances.
This was not said outright, but everyone understood it perfectly well. Either you give the money voluntarily or we will raise taxes again. So this is a kind of voluntary compulsory situation. And as we know, the most vulnerable oligarchs, Suleiman Kerimov and Herbert Pask, responded to this meeting as they fear that the authorities might use not only tax measures against them, but also some harsher sanctions.
Journalists from the Financial Times note that from the statements of the Russian dictator, it became clear that he is determined to continue the war against Ukraine, despite the growing strain on the Kremlin.
The biggest problem for the Kremlin today is not so much money, but manpower. And it is important to consider that this resource is simply not something that can be easily replenished or restored through the simple process of direct financial or resource injections. As for the question of how long they will continue to keep doing this, whether, so to speak, for a seemingly indefinite or infinite stretch of time, or perhaps for many months, several years, and so on, ultimately, when we look at the broader picture, It all depends on a wide variety of different circumstances. And there are actually quite a lot of different assumptions and theories that could be made here.
The Russian dictator explained the need to continue the war by saying that Ukraine refused to withdraw its troops from Donbas during the last rounds of negotiations mediated by the United States.
In my opinion, what Putin said, that we will get there anyway, is primarily meant as a scare tactic for Ukraine, right? To say, you don't want to negotiate, but we were ready to negotiate according to Trump's proposal, and now we won't, now we'll go all the way.
On March 26th, The Bell, citing sources, reported that after the Congress of the Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs, Putin held a closed meeting with businessmen, where he proposed that they finance the war against Ukraine.
At this current moment, there is a brief sense of relief, resulting from the ongoing war in Iran, yes. Oil prices have risen in the short term, so over a short period it might seem to Putin that the problems are over. But it's clear that the problems are absolutely systemic, and as they say, as soon as the situation in Iran reaches its logical conclusion, the economic situation in Russia will collapse critically.
The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has repeatedly stated that Ukraine will not abandon Donbas, since retreating would open the way for Russia to other regions of the country and would not stop new demands from the Kremlin. By banning the Telegram messenger, Putin's government shot itself in the foot, and the statistics confirm this. As a result of the Telegram blockade, pro-Kremlin media suffered 2.5 times more than opposition media. According to calculations by the publication New Europe, Z channels lost 41% of their views due to the blockades, while opposition outlets, 16.5%. Some pro-government media lost more than half of their readers. For example, Ura.ru lost 58% of its audience, and Komsomolskaya Pravda lost 52%. These two media outlets are past the previous anti-record holder. Last week, the most affected channel was the propagandist Solovyov. This week, his losses amounted to 48%, according to journalists. For the first time, Lukashenko is in North Korea. Celebrations, songs, dances, and gifts. This is just the beginning. Has isolation really made itself felt this much? The friendship and cooperation between the two dictators is now confirmed on paper as well. But does Putin know about this? And why has the potato dictator accelerated so much in his pursuit to regain his influence?
A parade of honors and ostentatious grandeur. It seems that even in Moscow, Lukashenko was not received with such pomp. For the first time, the Belarusian dictator visited North Korea. So to speak, he traveled from one isolated country to another. And this is not just a visit for the sake of protocol. Against the backdrop of isolation, such meetings become a political signal.
First of all, I want to express my gratitude to you for the invitation and the warm welcome here on the blessed Korean land.
Well, why not? They surely have a lot in common. For example, they could discuss who received more votes in the most honest elections. But seriously, what is Lukashenko looking for in North Korea? Support or something more?
We all know perfectly well that apart from Moscow, Lukashenko isn't really welcomed anywhere else, and even there he's only received when he's summoned. That's it. Still, this connection with North Korea, a nuclear state that is striving to obtain a nuclear triad with the help of the Russian Federation, and let's say on the other side of the continent, really does provide certain strategic opportunities for Belarus.
But it's not just about parades. To honor the arrival of such a great potato guest, they even organized an entire concert. At that moment, somewhere in his bunker, a lonely Putin was sobbing.
Oh, my beautiful dearest springs!
And of course, there had to be an exchange of gifts. In response to the saber, the decorative vase, and the souvenir gold coin, apparently there was nothing in Minsk.
That's all I have time to tell you for now. But we're not saying goodbye. We'll see you again in just a few hours on the In Trend project. There, I'll tell you about the ongoing uprising in Siberia, the mass rallies planned across Russia for tomorrow, as well as the latest whining from Z bloggers, a visit by a German politician to Chechnya, and other interesting news. See you soon.